We have a problem. Not just in this country, but around the world. And that problem is the negative representation of people of color, of people who are being actively oppressed in the media. I want to try and make a quick point about what that bias is, about why it exists, and about why it's harmful. I don't know if this is going to be quick, but the outline ended up being only a page and a half, so. So if you've watched television for most of your life, or watched movies, or read enough books, or if you're like me and you just watch the news, you can view some trends in the media. Trends that I think might be harmful. For example, the protagonists of most stories are white people. And the most common role for people of color in most stories is that of a disposable villain. Granted, there are a lot of white villains too, but that's a distraction. That's not the thing. We're not saying we need more black protagonists. We're talking about larger systemic issues. Neither of those things, that white people are the good guys or that black people are the bad guys, are a problem in and of themselves. It's taken in tandem that they become a problem. The problem is representation. And that problem isn't a problem that can be individualized. And when I say individualized, I of course mean, is it racist? So the way I described racism when dealing with the police would indicate that this specific thing is racist, because it specifically targets people of color, and it is specifically harmful to them. But I think discussing it in terms of systems like that, discussing this problem of representation in terms of larger systems, also kind of misses the point. And there's a specific reason for that. Asking if a piece of media is racist is ultimately asking if one or more of the people who made that piece of art are racist. Because any work of art is something that was made by someone. Whether it's a painting, or a book, or a television show, or a YouTube video, I guess. And because we're talking about mass media, we're never talking about one person. If you're talking about YouTube videos, yeah, there are lots of YouTube videos that are racist. Hell, I'll grant you that there are lots of books that are racist. I've read most of the Turner Diary, and I've heard of Siege. I've never seen Birth of a Nation, but I did watch Innocence of Muslims, which I maintain is not just the worst film ever made, but is the worst thing ever made by human hands. There are things that are deliberately and specifically racist, yes. Even in mass media, there are things that are deliberately and specifically racist. And there are things that deliberately and specifically target other groups of people for persecution. Remember that episode of CSI about furries? I don't. I've never seen it. I don't watch television. But individual people being racist or bigoted or oppressive in other ways, maybe that's not the problem that we need to solve. Maybe the system isn't really the problem here. Maybe the problem is that racists are allowed to do the racism within that system. Also, ultimately, like talking with the police, talking about individuals and whether or not those individuals are racist is not going to be helpful in solving that problem that we need to solve. Because that's just the one person. There's also a much more insidious thing, and that is the marginalization of media created specifically for people of color, and the silencing of those voices that create those media. But that's not something that I can get into right away, so let's go on to the next topic. I think it's fair to say, I think most good faith actors would agree that we live in a society that is dominated by white people, and therefore white culture. That creates certain expectations. Like, that's why most protagonists of most things are white people, because we're the dominant ones, and we want to see ourselves in those heroic protagonists. But, as I've alluded to before, this does create an entirely separate problem. Two separate problems, actually. First, it creates standards that oppressed people, people of color in this case, might not be able to meet. And also, It creates expectations that are harmful or dangerous for not just people of color, but all kinds of people. And, like, here's the hell of it, not all of this is even intentional. Let's take 24 as an example. With the benefit of hindsight, we can very clearly see how a show like 24 contributed to rampant Islamophobia and the legitimization of the use of torture. If something like 24 came out today, in the same way that it came out back in the day, I don't think that anyone could argue that it would be Islamophobic. But I think that there's wiggle room to say that back then it might not have been bigoted on purpose. Again, this goes back to expectations. Something like 24 making the Muslims the bad guys, or other media, or films, or games, or television shows where they use people of color as disposable villains, or portray trans people as having debilitating mental illness, or portray people with mental illness or physical illness as being dangerous to themselves and other people. A person could potentially assert that they are trying to create a fiction that is congruent with the reality that people have lived in. It's helpful to remember that 24 was made right after 9/11 and during the War on Terror. And a lot of people saw Muslims as being the bad guy. And make no mistake, I am not alleviating the people who made 24 of the responsibility of the Islamophobia and the legitimization of torture that they helped promote. In fact, I would argue it makes it worse. By using those stereotypes, and that's what we're talking about ultimately as stereotypes, they are contributing to those things. They're making it worse. Creating media, portraying people in a certain way, creates those biases, creates those expectations that these people either can't meet or is harmful to them. If you typify Muslims as being terrorists, then people are going to be terrified out of their minds of Muslims. If you typify black people as being criminal gangbangers, then people are going to be terrified of black people. If you typify Mexicans as being a swarm of diseased degenerates, then people are going to hate Mexicans. It also leads to the other thing that I was talking about, the active suppression of the voices of people of color. And that happens because those voices are not congruent with the lived experiences of people like me. And let's talk about why that's harmful. So there's a thing that I feel like I need to come clean about. There's a thing that I feel I have felt for a while that I need to tell everyone. All of this stuff that I talk about, I don't just know that. I was taught everything I know about going out and protesting, about how harmful oppression is, about how to fight oppression. All of those things, I was taught those things by black women. But people who are being oppressed tend to understand their oppression better than anyone. Better even than the people who are doing it. And that's why their voices are so important, especially if you're trying to help those people. It's also, as I said, why those voices get shut down. If a white person doesn't know the first fucking thing about oppression, then they're going to become upset when they hear about it because it's not something that's congruent with their worldview. It doesn't happen to them, so it doesn't count. What is happening with people of color is not only are they being actively oppressed, but their voices are being silenced because their voices are expressing ideas that are not congruent with the dominant culture. Because they have different life experiences, having been oppressed for their entire lives. The most negative portrayals are even worse. They can actively establish that certain people are better off being oppressed, and so that's a thing that works. Or even worse, they can establish that the only way to keep white people safe is to actively oppress people of color. And if you don't believe that happens, go watch Fox News for 20 minutes. See how they talk about these people at the border. Then go compare it to what Nazi Germany said about their migrants. But there's good news too. Very small good news. This is beginning to change. And it isn't just changing because, as I described in my video about why the police are racist, faith in the established order is becoming more and more eroded. This is beginning to change because, as I said in my video about the police, people are becoming more and more aware of the specific harmful oppressions that people of color go through every day. White people, are becoming more aware of the specific oppressions that people of color face because of mass media like Twitter and Facebook that shows people their lives in real time. And people of color are finally being given a larger place in the larger media, in places like film and television. It's not a lot bigger, but it's something. And again, please don't mistake what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying racism is solved forever! Hallelujah! I'm just saying that it's good that people have these voices now, have this ability to speak out about their own lives, because those voices are sorely needed, especially if we're going to try and solve the oppressions that these people face on a day-to-day basis. This is also why you're seeing more mainstream right-wing everything. From YouTube channels like Steven Crowder and The Quartering, to mainstream news outlets like Fox News and Breitbart, to fucking fashy-fash gatherings all over the fucking place. It's the dominant culture, white culture, trying to reassert itself at the expense of people of color. And while I'm not going to suggest that it hasn't been successful, it has, at least in monetary terms, I am going to tell you that most people I know understand that all of these things are full of shit. More importantly, and the thing that I want you to take away from this more than anything, is that the right wing wouldn't be fighting so hard if there wasn't anything worth fighting for. Culture is shifting, and it is not shifting in their favor. The moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And justice means that everyone gets a seat at the table. That's the end of that script. Let's have ourselves a smooth transition over to editing, Ron. You got it? I'm really tired. So, this wasn't a good month for me. Lots of bad stuff happening in my life. The most pertinent thing for viewers right now is that I didn't get out 4 videos. I meant to, but there were periods where it was literally too hot down here to film. It was like 110 degrees Fahrenheit. I think that's like 37 degrees Celsius. I don't know. I could look it up, but I don't feel like it. There's something I'm a little bit concerned about, and something that I want people to understand. These weren't difficult because I wasn't taking them seriously. The biggest reason these last 3 videos were more difficult than usual, and they were significantly more difficult to make, is because I wasn't speaking from my own experiences. I was transplanting the experiences of other people whom I know, who have detailed these experiences to me. Like I keep saying, I'm not oppressed. And I'm not just not oppressed because I'm a white guy. I'm not oppressed because I'm 6 feet tall and 200 pounds of muscle. Nobody has the temerity, that's the word I keep using, the temerity to try and oppress me. There's this thing going on in the left tube sphere where people are trying to be more inclusive. People are trying to make it more welcoming for people of color, and I thought that one of the ways that I could do that is by addressing certain issues. I don't know, I figured it sounded like a good idea at the time. I'm very tired. So, next month's theme is going to be ideas. I've already started working on writing all of those. I'm going to try and stay up Friday and bang all those out. Those are ideas that have been fermenting in my head for a while in different ways. I also, now that I have the ability to do so, I want to try and make more video content. Like, just maybe 2 or 3 videos a week instead of just the one that I've been making. Just because I have a ton of fucking ideas that I just haven't gotten to yet. And, like, not everything needs to have an outline. I know what I want to say about, for example, the whole what is RedTube thing. I have thoughts on that, but I'm not going to need an outline because it's not very difficult to parse out. So the next scripted video that, with any luck, should come out on this coming Saturday is going to be, if I recall correctly, it's going to be about how ideas don't exist in a vacuum. I don't know. I'll put out an update video with a schedule when I've finished writing, probably. I'm gonna try and record all of them at once. This is a bad idea to do when I'm this tired. Alright. That's all I can say right now while keeping my eyes open. Very gentle reminder, I do still have a Ko-Fi. If you found any of this to be worthwhile and you have the ability to, throw me a couple of dollars over on Ko-Fi. That'd be great. I could use it to buy bottled water or something. I'm trying to drink less soda. It's bad for you. People tell me it's bad for you. If you can't donate, that's fine. I don't want you to be donating. I don't want you to be giving me your money if you can't afford it. Don't feel obligated to do that. The slowdown this month was caused by natural fucking circumstances. How hot it was down here. It wasn't due to money. Also, share this video if you think it's the people who share it in spaces where you think they're going to be sympathetic to it, where you think it's going to land well. I cannot tell you how important sharing video content is to people who are on YouTube. That's especially now that YouTube is clamping down on independent stuff. That's the only way we can get our content out. So yeah, until we get there, take care of yourselves, alright?